With Commander being such a popular format, it really comes to pass now for players to decide, do they start building a new Commander deck from scratch, or is there a reason to still buy some of Wizards of the Coast's pre-constructed Commander decks? Is it treasure, or is it trash? Players should be careful what they wish for, because having Wizards of the Coast pay this much attention to Commander is not exactly a good thing. Welcome back, everyone. MTG Moxman here. Thanks again for hanging out with me on my channel today. A big shout out and thank you to all the new subscribers joining the channel. Remember, guys, if you enjoyed today's content, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, like and subscribe, and of course turn your notification bells on because I upload content each and every day of the week. So we're talking Commander today. Now, as a relatively new player to Commander, I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot about the format a few years ago. People on the channel have taught me, my friends have, but this is what I remember before we get started. When I first heard about Commander, I heard it was for poor players. Players who didn't have a lot of money, didn't have the Type 1 decks, didn't have vintage legacy decks with all the cool cards we all had. It was meant for people who could only afford one of something. And as the years have gone by, some of these cards became very expensive as the format gained in popularity. Eventually, gaining the attention of Wizards of the Coast, saying, wow, there's a lot of money going here. A lot of these cards aren't really popular in other formats, but they're necessary in Commander. And then we started getting all kinds of pre-constructed Commander decks. What was that, 2011? Somewhere around there? Somewhere back then. And it started coming to pass that Wizards of the Coast gave us pre-constructed decks. And as the format continued to grow, as the popularity of this format gained, Wizards found new ways to bring products to the market that players could buy. I myself have seen many a grandparent, many an aunt or uncle buying pre-constructed Commander decks off the shelf at a Walmart, local shops like that. I've seen it happen all the time. Some of these smaller decks are inexpensive, 30, 40 bucks, easy to get, and it's like it's a whole contained deck, and they're ready to go, right? Like you could take this and you can play against anybody at your local store, right? Well, you can play, but you're not going to win. But you're going to play. You're not going to be competitive, though. I've learned that. Because as a player who has bought a few Commander decks, because I was unfamiliar with the format at the time, although I have a lot of old school cards, I had to get up there. And then I started realizing there's a real difference in some of these decks as the years have gone by. The values have changed. It has shifted, just like any other Wizards of the Coast product. The early ones have a lot of cool stuff in them. The older ones had really cool stuff. But the new products coming up the chain, the ones they give us each and every set, are really kind of like scraping the barrel for value. This is what I mean. Take a look at some of this stuff here. Here, right, is the first one. These are the Lord of the Rings ones. Now, here locally in Canada, these are $279.95 for 4, okay? Now, I just want you to keep these numbers in mind. I know in the US, you basically got to take off 30 to 35%, but here in Canada, $279.95 is the cheapest I could find for all 4 of them, and that's what I'm going with this, okay? All 4. Now, when you look at those Commander decks, and no, we don't know every single card yet. Those spoilers are still happening. Cards are still coming out. At least that's still a unique set. It isn't mixed in with anything else. It's going to have, of course, some reprint cards in it, but it's also going to have new cards from this particular set. So the value will probably hold fairly well. Because when I did the research for this video and I looked at all the different Commander decks, they're definitely not all created equal. Some have higher value cards that have held value. Others have not been as lucky. They've really gone down. I'll tell you right now, Warhammer 40K, totally holding its value. And that's interesting because it's still reprint cards, but that new artwork and the theme and feel of it has really got it going, which means if it's holding well and we see cards coming up like the Doctor Who set, Commander decks, when those come out, yes, it'll be reprints. I get that. But there'll probably be a few new cards in there, some new ideas because it's a Doctor Who standalone, that it'll hold value. Popular IP, holding value. But how about other product lines? Phyrexia All Will Be One Commander decks, $109.95. So that's 50 bucks each. $50 each. Now, $50 really is not a bad deal for these Commander decks when you actually break down the contents inside, having a fully pre-constructed deck ready to go, And knowing if those are the colors you want to play, you can actually work toward building a better, more fleshed out deck by building upon the core value of that deck. Tearing out cards you don't like and slowly building up, which is what I've been doing, is building better commander decks when I learn about new cards. Because there's so many thousands of cards, who can really know? But does that mean you should spend the $50 and buy that? Or should you just look at the contents of that and try to buy the cards singly, one at a time? Picking them all up. You'd be surprised how cheap you can get a lot of the cards in these commander decks. Because Wizards keeps reprinting them and giving the same cards like Command Tower, all these kind of staple cards everyone uses, they're cheap. They're easy to get because they want players to play the format. They want you to work your way up to the cards that they're reprinting. It's all marketing. It's all there for them. Now, how about something like this? 5 commander decks for $129.95. Because here's something that most people didn't realize. Here's something that most people aren't focused on. There's an overprinting of all these products. Just like everything else Wizards done. Kaldheim decks, Phyrexia decks, Nuka Penna decks. I don't care which one you're talking about. They're reprinted, they're everywhere, and they're sitting on store shelves. That tells me when I see them on sale, 20% off, 30% off, some cases $10 to $15 when they're clearing these things out because there's just too many. Like everything else, Wizards has got to wind this stuff back. Now, some of these decks I was surprised to see had like filter lands in them. They have Sunken City. We've got, what's that one? Creeping Tar Pit. Cards that used to be $30 are now $1 because they've been put into commander decks. Still a useful card, still great for a player to get their hands on though. So for a player trying to join a game, some of these decks can contain key cards. But again, should you buy that deck for $100, $110, depending on which commander deck it is, maybe as low as $50, or you just buy the $1 Creeping Tar Pit, because that's how cheap it is now. You buy the $5 Fetrid Heath, or whatever card you might need that you're building toward. Because we all know we've seen people's commander decks that have been fleshed out, built well, and are just like blow your mind. I've seen it numerous times, and I love seeing commander decks go off. When they just wipe out everybody, I can't help it, guys. I'm still new to the format. I love playing it, and I don't care if I lose. I care about playing. But for a lot of players trying to get into this format, it can seem very daunting taking a basic commander deck that they think is going to be playable for a new player coming in, and it's just not up to snuff. So the players I've talked to who I see looking around these products, I say you should probably take a look before you buy that, what's inside. Because all commander decks are not created equal. Now, here's something that changes things though. And this is something that's going to be happening in the future. Here are the Commander Masters commander decks. They're beautiful, they're gorgeous, we all know they look awesome. I understand that. Because they put 10 new cards in each one. 10 in each one. Look at the price tag attached. Look at that. $429.95. You saw that. $429.95 Canadian. I just showed you 5 commander decks for $129. $129.95 versus $400 and something. You know why? The other ones are barely playable. If you played all 5 of those just by themselves as a standalone, almost like a board game, they'll be fine. Because they're all going to play against each other. They're all from the same time zone, time frame of Magic's history. Those will be fine. But the new ones they're building, the ones they're adding the premium price to, are like the commander decks they give us each year, the individualized commander decks that cost hundreds of dollars. As well as decks like this now. When they see the sales of these, when they actually start counting those sales up, they'll look to see how well it did by putting new cards inside commander decks that are packaged as a premium product. Like every other premium product they put together. It just proves that they are not created equal. There are commander decks for poor players, like they used to be back in the day, who can't afford anything. They can go buy a Kaldheim pre-constructed commander deck for $30 Canadian. They can just go buy one. Or you have a snazzier player with a bigger wallet who says, I really want that Sliver Commander deck. I'm going to kind of break it down, take the key cards out, add a Sliver Queen, put some extra things like Cavern of Souls and stuff in there. It's going to be epic. And that's what those players are going to do. But here's where things can get interesting for newer players or players without a big wallet to buy Caverns of Souls and $400 Commander decks. Those low-end Commander decks can still be deconstructed. Creeping Tar Pit is no longer a $25 card, but it's still a playable card. The filter lands may not command a $25 price tag anymore, but even at $5, they're still worth having. Flooded Grove, Fetrid Heath, it doesn't matter which ones you're playing. Use the ones you need for your commander decks. But when you buy some of these cheaper commander decks that have those inside them, and they're on clearance or discount because Wizards of the Coast is overproducing, that's good for a player who's getting into the game. That means they may be able to get a commander deck. They may be able to buy one for $15, $16 Canadian on clearance from some of the bigger stores or Christmas specials or whatever comes around every year. There's a whole bunch on sale at all kinds of local retailers. I'm sure you guys have them on sale too because they're overproduced by Wizards. But if you're a new player getting, you have some friends joining in, yeah, the beginning decks, the decks can just look horrible, okay? They look awful. But you can start tearing them apart card by card and adding the cards you want. You may be able to spend $100 on a commander deck. That's your budget. But you could buy 1 or 2 decks or even a set of 5 if you spend a few bucks more. Take out the key cards and start building something you actually really want to play with. And do it over time. It's funny how I would look down on pre-constructed decks for the most part because I want to build things myself. But when you look at all the cards inside, things from a Soul Ring to the Command Tower, key cards you might need. Well, now you don't have to go looking. You can start with a base set, tear apart a deck, and start building. So even when something is trash, it can still have some treasure. Let Wizards of the Coast create new cards for the game. Go ahead, let them have some fun with their R&D, creating these amazing cards that will have a premium price. But everything filters down, and it filters down through the system. So if one deck is super popular, other decks aren't, they become cheaper. The popular decks get reprinted more often. Yes, it decreases value. They're probably still going to overprint it, but now it gets into the hands of players who maybe couldn't afford it before. It's an interesting thing to watch happen. To think that these decks are worthless would be underestimating the value of how Commander is played. They don't have to be the best decks to be playable. You may not be able to compete with the other players, but you can buy a deck with the colors you want to play with. Look for a better commander over time. Look for better individual lands to fill your deck out. Go for better spells as they come along, like Commander Masters or Commander Legends, Battle for Baldur's Gate. I know. Too soon? Some of those cards are holding. Don't underestimate that set. It's very interesting to see. So when I look at commander decks now, I look at them in an entirely different way. I look at the contents of that deck, and if there's enough cards in there I think I need, I don't mind spending $30 buying a deck, guys. And you shouldn't either. There's a lot of treasure inside what apparently looks like trash to a lot of people. Interesting stuff. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me today. Thanks for being here on the channel. I still think they're going to keep going with premium decks, but we can talk about that as new products come out. I think this was an interesting time to view the new products like Lord of the Rings and say that set's going to hold value. Warhammer 40k, Doctor Who, those individual sets that may have key cards and Commander Masters decks, they're going to hold a lot of value because they're the first decks come out with these new cards in them. And for a long time, Wizards will lord that over people as a premium price product. It's very interesting how the company has broken the dynamic down to go this route, to give new products but still profit from them. It's something on the financial side I love looking at. I'm intrigued by the whole idea of it. And you got to pay attention to it because they know what they're doing. Thanks again for hanging out, guys. Thanks for allowing me to entertain you each and every day. And of course, this weekend we have the top 10 on Saturday. And of course, the reserve list top 10 on Sunday. Looking forward to seeing you guys there for each of those videos. Thanks again. We'll see you tomorrow. Bring a friend to Magic. Have an awesome day. Thanks again to the fantastic supporters I have on my channel each and every day, to the patrons who stick by and say, we want daily content. We want things uploaded for us to enjoy. These are the people who make it happen each and every month. Thanks again to all my patrons. Welcome back to the Nachos and Cheese section, brought to you by Megatron and Optimus Prime. I'm enjoying playing Commander and the construction, but here's the thing. I would enjoy playing a 60-card deck. Just playing 60-card decks against people too. I don't have to play Commander, even though so many people do. I just like playing. So it doesn't have to be Commander for me, but since that's the most popular format, you got to build some decks so you can play with people. And buying a pre-constructed deck and then slowly changing over time makes perfect sense to me. And a very inexpensive way to get into the format. It doesn't cost a lot. It's like buying a starter deck. It's pretty reasonable, actually, especially when you buy them on sale. I just like the idea of it. Now, for those of you who are wondering, by the way, how my format is going, we've got this down, okay? I'm getting there. I'm going to have to get some play testing in, but we are working things out. I will probably do a video that will explain everything, and then you guys can play with some friends. You're going to need 6 people, though, because it's 3 versus 3. So we'll see how it goes. And you may have to build decks for this. It'll be interesting. I have an itchy nose. I'm itchy. I don't know. Itchy. Anyway, thanks a lot for hanging out. Thanks for being here. Clean the room, tidy up, turn the lights off when you leave. Come on, don't waste power. And make sure you go do the things you have to do so you can go enjoy the things that you want to do. Guys, have an awesome day. We'll see you tomorrow. And if your kids are there, guys, you need to go clean up. Help mom and dad. Do the dishes.